Afternoon, everyone. We will now resume proceedings in Finance Committee, and we will now be considering the appropriations to the Minister of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Please be seated. We will now consider the first appropriation, DAT 1, Advice and Support to the Minister of District Administration, Tourism and Transport, $1,630,085 on page 96 of the annual plan and estimates. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bush?
Lest I trade on ground that you might not want, Mr. Chairman. In my questioning on the closure of the hotel, tell me where you want that to be brought in. Under the policies here?
Yes, sir.
Advice and support?
Yes, sir.
That's the first question I have, Mr. Chairman.
Could you state it more precisely? So
Yes. I was just waiting to be called. What is the ministry doing to, first of all, see if they can get that hotel back into operation? And in the meantime, what is the ministry doing to alleviate the miseries the closure will bring?
Mr. Kirkconnell?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, thank you very much for the question. The Alexander Hotel closed on Monday of this week. From the standpoint of the tourism product in Cayman Brac and Little Cayman, it was a very important part of our inventory. It was not only an important part of our inventory, but it's something that we looked forward to building the occupancy, and we started keenly to work in the direction of diversification and increasing the number of visitors to Cayman Brac. And we started on that in a planned way with Sister Island Tourism Association and meetings with the Department of Tourism that invited all of the tourism stakeholders to come together. The sadness of the hotel closing is something that we have met with the owners last week. I met with them, my ministry met, chief officer, myself, and I believe the next day they met with some other ministers that had different areas of responsibility. We have certainly expressed that we want the property to stay open, but we understand if a commercial decision is made that you, as a business person, decide to close something that you either control by a position of chief executive officer or as the owner. What we do from the ministry standpoint and from the government standpoint is try to support and work to encourage and provide the necessary tools that make our partners profitable.
Mr. Chairman, I'm glad to hear about the tools to make the tourism work. In this instance, in spite of the meetings that he may have had, the minister was not successful in keeping the hotel open, which they were warned that further assistance needed to be had in order for the hotel to be open, to remain open. I'm not going to, Mr. Chairman, because I'm cognizant of timing, and I will find another avenue to deal fully in a much more full fashion or full way of questioning and giving my opinion as to the whole matter of the property and the closure of it. But the minister has said they are using whatever tools necessary. He does know that it's within their ambit to move forward with that marina. And that has not happened, so that was the key tool in keeping the property open. Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to smite my conscience to say that I'm going to continuously ask the member, because I have heard from them, and I imagine that the member would want to see the hotel open. Certainly, I believe he should want to see it, but I heard from the other minister, and I imagine that they should have had some fight. I don't know if they had boxing gloves on or what they had, but they should have had some fight when two properties were being given and the next one not granted similar agreement. The one thing that I'll draw the members' attention to, Mr. Chairman, and try to be brief with it, is that the house in Cayman Brack agreed that all such projects, meaning the marinas, would be given the same treatment. The House passed that, and as Deputy Premier, I am asking him why they have not chosen to follow what the House passes on a vote, and particularly one vote or a motion that they amended 2 times for me to get it passed, inclusive of that matter. Again, that could well be debated if I get a chance to debate it, which I will attempt to do. But I do believe that because of the situation with Cayman Brack and all that we have to do to make Cayman Brack viable, that the House having passed a motion, that they ought to explain why they will not follow what the House agreed to by unanimous vote, that all such projects, meaning the marina projects, would be given the same treatment.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. Mr. Picarnell, if
Thank you,
there's a-
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I believe that the member well knows that the approvals passed in the House fall under a different ministry than mine. And he's just finished the questioning of that ministry and minister. But I also want to say that I agree with what the member said, that we, and I think this is a very fair comment, because like himself, I stood on the floor of the House in Cayman Brack and said that I was in favor of the marina, but it had to have an environmental assessment and it had to be done in that way. Also, I've made it quite clear in this House and in public meetings that our mandate that we were given by the people was for sustainable development in Cayman Brack. And we have worked, we continue to work, and we are very excited about the developments that were taking place and are taking place in Cayman Brack. And as far as development on the north side that was mentioned, a Barcadere, very similar to what Buccaneer Inn has, in the same proximity of Buccaneer Inn, and we all remember what Buccaneer Inn was to Cayman Brack. A dock on the south side and the Dilbert Marina. I am in support of those. I am in support of economic development in Cayman Brack. We are working to do everything we can do to make Cayman Brack sustainable. We are bringing more airlift to Cayman Brack because we earmarked and said one of the reasons you can't get enough tourists and they don't come in a way is because of the lift. That lift problem has been addressed, and you will, I'm sure, ask questions about it here today in Finance Committee. We have also looked at the airport and are expanding the airport to get direct flights that can go as an international airport should directly into Miami or Tampa or other gateways in the United States. We're working to increase the number of expectations that tourists have when they arrive there by facilitating sports tourism, by looking more at the family market, and looking at weddings. We had the global meetings there. So we are putting every effort, and we are in support of getting these projects going, every one of them.
Everything the minister says is satisfactory to me, having had some responsibility to try to get certain things going in Cayman Brac, and still on that trend from my own perspective at what needs to be done in Cayman Brac. So I am in full support, and I recognize what is being done and a continuance of what had been put in place between 2009 and 2012 and 13, and before that. But all these attempts now to expand tourism, to bring in, as he said, you're going to try to expand tourism by going to more gateways, or hopefully getting more gateways from Cayman Brac. And in spite of all of that, your main hotel, one of your main hotel, because while Carib Sands, I think it's called, is a property that rents, they only have so many. And the one hotel, which is Mr. Tibbetts Hotel, they're the only two. And so you're going to spend money to get planes for Cayman Brac, going to spend money to promote and get the gateways, which we know we need. We're going to spend money and get the airport expanded as we plan to expand. All of that is fine, but then you close one hotel that has how many rooms?
Thank you. I thank the member for his support and his kind words. I want to put this in perspective, because the initiatives that we are putting in place are well placed for what Cayman Brac has right now as far as bricks and mortar. There are 279 registered rooms and villas in Cayman Brac with the Department of Tourism. The Alexander Hotel has 30 rooms. So working hard with the Alexander to encourage and keep them open will continue. But as far as them not being available in the next 2 or 3 months, hopefully they will be, but it still will not and should not stop the development that we're pushing, because we are encouraging people to invest in Cayman Brac. We're encouraging people to build more rooms in Cayman Brac. We're encouraging other hotels to look at Cayman Brac, and we're doing that in a very aggressive way.
I understand that, Mr. Chairman, and he's not been any more aggressive than what we had been before him. And I certainly, again, want to thank him for continuing that. But he full well, the minister knows that for Cayman Brac, for any development, and even so in Cayman Brac, where a mindset is that you want things but you don't want things changed, how are you going to get anything done there within a year and a half? It's going to take a long time, and people need to understand that. We know when the buildings that are sitting there, I forget names, but when that one closed, the damage that it done, and we were unable, even threatening, even passing a law, and we were unable to get them to reopen, and even get them to do something about the mess that you got there now. And I hope that is being attended to under the current legislation. But it's not going to be fixed, even when we spend millions of dollars to put Cayman Brac on the right path. You're not going to get that done till a year and a half time. Who knows, you might not be the minister then. And now I know that's not going to happen, but...
Yes, Mr. Bush, is there a specific question, sir?
I think the questions are implicit in what we're discussing, Mr. Chairman. I don't know that I can ask any more questions other than what is going to be done, because saying these things that are going to be done, and we know they can't be done overnight, and they can take a year and a half, Cayman Brac is going to suffer more in that time frame. and it does not help that property, which is one of the star properties, according to Expedia, I think it was. TripAdvisor, one of the a good property. What we knew we had been talking about for Cayman Brack, not huge structures, but a well-apportioned property, and that was 30 rooms. So I don't know that I can ask any more questions in relation to that. I have 1,000 more to ask him, but not on that one.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bush. Are there any further questions with respect to appropriation DAT1? Ms. O'Connor Connolly?
More of an observation. I wonder if the Honourable Deputy Premier could say why he is going to be receiving some $500,000 less for his policy advice this year than he did last year.
I think through you, Mr. Chairman, the phrase that has been coined is doing more with less. Each one of the specific line items that fall into that vote have been reduced by percentages. So I don't think there's one, you can't carve out just one thing and say that that's the reason it was reduced that amount, but all of the different areas in the advice. I can ask the chief officer if the member needs a breakdown on it.
Yeah, I'm not actually complaining. I just want to make sure that it's not an error and that, in fact, the extra $300,000 that we're getting for Cayman Brack this year, whether that was a set-off or whether it just disappeared. And while he's checking, I guess I should just follow it through, Mr. Chairman. There's $500,000 less here, and there's the $300,000 there. Is it a case that $200,000 will appear somewhere else, or why couldn't the whole $500,000 go to Cayman Brack? If you want a truthful question.
Total of $1 million in those 3 votes.
I'm going to ask the chief officer just to explain that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Strand Barton, Chief Officer in the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism, Transport. Mr. Chairman, this output group is for the core ministry itself. It's not actually funding for Cayman Brack. The reductions include in local promotions, special conferences, miscellaneous visits, and entertainment and program services. Those have been reduced. As Deputy Premier has said earlier, it's doing more with less.
$1 million less, those 3 votes. We take the other 2 ones, it's still another 500 again. Yeah, 3 and 2.
Are there any further questions?
Mr. Chairman, in regards to the income for the district, what is the amount that actually is spent in the district? How much is it costing to run the district as such?
Are we moving on to the next vote?
No,
I think that's where that's found.
Total vote I'm talking about for Cayman Brack.
Right, what he's saying, Mr. Bush, is that appropriation DAT2 would answer that question really relates to appropriation DAT2. So if you want it, they would
Maybe I
answer
better put it in a different way. Have they done a costing as to what is contributed to the budget for Cayman Brack? And I don't know if he wants to include that in DAT 1 or that he wants to take it up in DAT 2 and there onwards. I would think that one has some costing on it. Maybe the minister can't get to that right away because it'll take some cost, but I would like to find out. I would like to know what that cost is.
I will commit to the member to have that sent to him, because it's going to take a little while
takes some
because
while.
of how it goes across ministries to actually be able to answer that.
It will take some while. I recognize that. Mr. Chairman, having said a while ago that the ministry is looking at all the things to do for Cayman Brac, and the talks and discussions they're having with the various Sister Islands Tourism Association and so on, and the Cayman Islands group here as well. What have you given any cost as to the closure of the hotel? Because I really don't believe that my question in the very first instance was answered, and that is, what is the ministry doing to alleviate the miseries the closure will bring? There were a number of people will be now unemployed, and so that has to be taken into the consideration in the answer that I am asking, the question that I'm asking, and also the loss of income, because there would be the room tax, unless that was caught up in the waiver that we give across the board for stamp duty. I don't know.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, from the standpoint of the labor, we have asked that once they have finished their work, there's compensation, obviously, that's going to be given to them, and that they report to the labor office and the social service. And the minister responsible for that has been notified of that, number one. Number two, I want to explain this in a way that when there were bookings that were going to be lost, the hotel itself and the manager of the hotel called other hotel properties and other private villas to try to protect the ones that were already booked, that would give the tourism tax and have created the employment. I can tell you that I know of a couple people that have gone to work at another little restaurant that opened. From the standpoint of looking forward, again, I want to say that what the Department of Tourism has found is that the fastest growing room market on Cayman Brac is private villas. So as people are looking to come to Cayman Brac, they have a choice. And if today the private villas were running at a 40 or 50% occupancy, the marketing part of it and the encouragement to keep the same number or more people coming would be to strengthen the marketing program of the rooms that are available.
Mr. Chairman, last question.
Yes, Mr. Bush.
In regards to the income from the private villas, across the board there has been complaints about those persons that always pay government, that government have no problem with, yet that private villas owned by foreign nationals from wherever, they rent them, and people come in and people don't have any knowledge of what is paid. As minister, I've had to deal with that over and often. That inquiry, those complaints. I was on the radio the other day, and such complaints came in. What is government doing about it?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, again, thank you for the question. Just conferring with the Department of Tourism, and they are satisfied that the way that they monitor the private villas, that they are collecting the room tax, and they continue to strengthen the way they do it. I think when we get to that line item, we can have the conversation. I'll ask the director or acting director to come and explain to you exactly what's done.
So as I said, I knew even in the various times I've been in and out of cabinet that has been, I think, a justified complaint. And we kept saying, you know, it will get better, but the complaints are still coming, that some people who have the private houses pay government and do so, you know, honestly every month, whereas, or whatever time they're supposed to, whereas it was, whether by perception or by fact, known fact, that these people owning these private homes were renting them and saying, well, you know, we're giving them, it's our friends that are coming down and there's no charge and so on. So maybe there is a way to find out if that is happening, and hopefully the department is able to cope with it.
Well, based on what I was just told, there's satisfaction that the villas are being monitored and that they're paying their room tax in Cayman Brac.
Are there any further questions? If there are no further questions, we'll proceed to the vote. All those in favor of DAT 1, advice and support to the Minister of District Administration, Tourism and Transport for $1,630,085, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no. DAT 2, Government Services in Cayman Brac and Little Cayman, $3,567,688 on page 98 of the annual plan and estimates. Are there any questions? Mr. Miller?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the Minister. The Minister, in response to a question early on, said that every effort was being made to get direct flights for Cayman Airways and to promote tourism, yet you're not budgeting any additional passengers to be processed in Cayman Brac than was processed last year. Last year was 50 to 55, and it's the same amount this year. Is there no expectation in the number of passengers to be increased?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, we expect the numbers to be increased, but we also realize that right now, if you think of a plane coming in and being processed, if the Miami flight that comes in on Saturday comes in with 45 people, the same officers that are there to meet the 45 people could in that same time period that they're slotted for, meet 80 people. So we think it's marginal and it can be monitored. We certainly hope that 6 months from now we have the problem that we have to find more money to because of the increase.
It's not. My question is not related to officers to process them. It's the actual number of passengers that you expect to arrive to be processed is the same for the next financial year as it is this year. And we're spending a lot of money and a lot of effort to increase it. So I'm wondering if that's a mistake, or you are not envisaging any increase even though we're investing several $1 million.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank the member for that question. We're flagging it to review it. One thing that Chief Officer has just said is it's a big range there, 2,000 to 3,000. So I hope we're on the upper side of that range. But we're going to look at it now and go back and see if there's a reason that this should be changed.
Are there further questions? Are there any further questions? If there are no further questions, then we'll proceed to the vote. All those in favor of DAT2, Government Services in Cayman Brac and Little Cayman for $3,567,688, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no. DAT3, Management of Executive Assets in Cayman Brac and Little Cayman, $4,200,087 on page 100. Are there any questions? Mr. McLean?
Mr. Chairman, I'm just wondering here, DAT3, right? I'm wondering here, we really got 1,200 miles of road in Cayman Brac? Oh, we do?
Mr.
How much we got in Grand Cayman then?
Mr. Colonel?
Thank the member for the question, and ask the district commissioner just to answer that. It's a logical answer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. When we look at the numbers there,
Before we do, could please state your name and title for the record.
my apologies, Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman. Ernest Scott, District Commissioner for the Sister Islands of Cayman Brac and Little Cayman. My explanation for that, for the question, would be is not that we have 1,200 or 1,300 miles of road, but we have approximately 200 miles of road. But what we do is we maintain the same road repeatedly over and over, quarterly, like, from 1 month to the next.
Mr. Chairman, could never be he saying that. When we just pave every piece of road in Cayman Brac, explain that.
Mr. Colonel?
Chairman, what I would like to hear is what are we going to maintain? Mr. Scott just said that we keep maintaining it over and over. I understand that. Prior to that asphalt going down, what are we doing to that now? We putting on top of that again?
Other roads are,
That is a 30-year road.
yeah, but other roads now.
What, where? We did
Mr.
close to over 100 miles of road already. Close to 100 miles of road out of the 200. And we still got the same amount maintained? Come on now.
Thank you, Mr. McLean. Mr. Scott?
Mr. Chairman, through you, when we talk about maintaining the roads, we not necessarily or not specifically talking about maintaining the road surface. We're talking about the road shoulders, the bushes on the road, the pedestrian walkways, and the like. So we're not necessarily speaking purely about the road surface.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask him where the maintenance work for the road is then? Because we're talking about cutting the grass verges you're talking
Yeah, the
about here.
verges and the shoulders.
And what are you doing that with Machete?
Sometimes, yes, sir.
I ain't asking more question here.
Mr. Chairman, though, I think probably Cayman Black members can explain so that all members understand. And I think when I say all members, particularly new members and listening public, that because of the situation, Cayman Black is constantly having to find work for people, and so funding is needed. And whether we think we got 200 miles or 400, we constantly are cutting, paving, repairing, and it's done in an effort to keep people in employment. Or Cayman Black would be in a whole lot worse position if we didn't spend that money there.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of DAT3, management of executive assets in Cayman Brac and Little Cayman for $4,200,087, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no.
Mr. Chairman,
We will now consider the executive assets. Those are found on page 295 and onwards, or page 295 of the annual plan and estimates. Turning now to executive assets. EA 55, Cayman Brac and Little Cayman Roads, $1,200,000, found on page 295 of the annual plan and estimates. I'll take all of those in block. EA 60, Cayman Brac, Bluff Playfield, $300,000. EA 95, Cemetery Vaults, Cayman Brac and Little Cayman, $20,000. EA 125, Cayman Brac Emergency Shelter, $175,000. EA 137, Cayman Brac Farm Wells, $25,000. EA 139, Little Cayman Boat Launch Ramp, $75,000.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Bush.
On the Cayman Brac shelter, on EA 125, and a continued vote that is, I see what was forecast for last year was 500,000, and this year is 175. Where are we? What stage is this shelter at? And is that the same building on the bluff by the field?
yeah.
So it's a continued of that project. Okay.
Correct.
You need to go any further with me.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. Are there any further questions? Mr. McLean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wonder, Mr. Chairman, if the minister can explain EA 55 for us. What is the intent?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to ask the district commissioner just to explain that.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. EA 55, Cayman Brac and Little Cayman Roads, that's ongoing for quite some time, and it got mentioned earlier with the paving, the hot mix paving and all. We have advanced to the point we've got the North Coast Road on Cayman Brac paved with the hot mix, also the South Coast Road paved, and a portion of the Bluff Road paved from east to west. This is a continuing, ongoing project, and we're now moving in the center of the bluff, coming west, paving with hot mix. That piece of the road is kind of, I guess you could say it's our three most critical pieces of roadways, road corridors on Cayman Brac. And that's where the main focus is going to be with this budget. But it will also include moving on into side roads and secondary roads that feed off of the three main road corridors.
Thank you. Mr.
And of course, Mr. Chairman, if I may, this includes Little Cayman Road work as well.
Thank you, Mr. Scott.
Yep, Mr. Chairman, I was going to ask that. This says Little Cayman. This doesn't say anything about Cayman Rock.
Yeah, we could, all the other roads go over.
So it's only the north side road of Little Cayman. Will that be paved?
Yes.
How? Hello?
Mr. Chairman, ongoing paving will take place on the north coast in Little Cayman through, some people refer to it as chip and spray. In the back, we tend to call it sand seal. It has a rock base with a finer rock finish, covered with asphalt and then blinded with a fine sand. That's why we tend to call it sand seal. Very closely resembles the chip and spray.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Chairman, that's why I asked, because I know Cayman Brackers don't like chip and spray. And when he said chip and spray, I wondered, because paving we call is asphaltic concrete. And then I know they do sealing up there. So we're not moving the equipment down to Little Cayman then?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Can I ask now, Mr. Chairman, to the minister, what is the intent of this equipment that was bought for Grand Cayman, the paving equipment?
The equipment will continue in this budget year to do the roads on Cayman Brack.
Mr. Chairman, I guess, I don't know if this minister can answer this, but I waited for him because there is a somewhat of a conflict here when it comes to road paving, because it's costing government more here to do the paving now with private sector. And we have all the equipment in Cayman Brack where I guess that should be winding down now with the amount of roads that needs to be paved.
Yeah, I believe that, through you, Mr. Chairman, if I can explain this in the way that there's a life cycle to projects, and there's no private sector in Cayman Brack to do roads because there's no volume, no economy of scale, and I don't believe we have the ability to attract private sector to Cayman Brack. So the last minister responsible took it upon herself, rightly so, to bring this equipment to improve the quality of life and to improve the infrastructure of Cayman Brack. The project I found is a very good project, and I'm doing everything I can. Also, remember, my colleague is in support of this, and we will continue to do this road program. So I'm hoping the road building, to my knowledge, which is not in my ministry in Grand Cayman, is done by the NRA.
Can I ask how much money we have spent on the roads, paving in Cayman Brack? I mean, round figures. I don't expect you to give me to the dollar.
So he agreed on the...
Over what period, Mr. McLean?
Since the paving, since they have sent the machinery up there.
What a difference a day makes.
I'm told approximately $4 million.
And you agreed with the road program, right?
I agree to the road program, yes, sir.
I mean, this year you agreed, but not last year, or the year before that.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
I told you I've been a good program.
Are we saying we have spent $4 million on that project?
It's been more than one going down now.
Yes, sir.
And bought a batcher as well?
My question surrounded the,
No, I want to answer.
Okay.
Please.
I'm good.
That was 4 years.
It's over a 4-year period, and that is what we said, yes, $4 million.
Mr. Chairman, I just ask if the project, which includes a batching plant, if it's $4 million.
Another $750,000 for the batching plant.
Thank you. Mr. McTaggart?
I'm okay, sir. I was going to ask the same question with regard to the paving of the road in Little Cayman, the North Coast, but he answered it.
Thank you, Mr. McTaggart. Mr. Bush?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, in these votes, what are the plans for the Little Cayman Brac Airport? Are those plans incorporated in any of this expenditure? I didn't seem to find it, and I just...
And Little Cayman Airport? Little Cayman Airport, as you know, is not a regulated airport.
I know that,
It operates under an exemption, but that would fall under the Cayman Island Airport Authority and Civil Aviation. There is no budget here to do anything in the Little Cayman Airport.
So you don't have any, you're not making any plans for the airport there?
We are making plans for the airport there. That's part of the business case
Overall.
that the Airport Authority has done, which will be, it's public consultation will start on it in the next 3 weeks. It goes to Cabinet next week.
So, Mr. Chairman, I have another question, but you prefer not to go into it at this time and wait till you get to airports proper, the budget for that?
If I could get through most of the questions about...
Well, it's to do with Little Cayman, and we are in Cayman Brac and Little Cayman, so... The question I have, Mr. Chairman, is, as I asked, what are we proposing to do about it? Are we proposing to change aircraft? And if that is so, will that route be affected? Will the airport be able to utilize the aircraft presently or new or whatever we're doing? That's what I'm trying to find out. I don't know if you want to deal with it here or you want to deal with it later on.
I can deal with it very quickly. If it winds up with a lot of follow-up, I would just ask, I'm trying to get the district commissioner and deputy district commissioner to catch the flight back tonight to Cayman Brac. The Little Cayman Airport has been an issue over a long period of time because of the equipment that has to be flown into Little Cayman. And Cayman Brac has the ability to receive jets, and that has turned into an international airport. The business case for the 3 airports of the Cayman Islands has identified that rightfully so the priority at this point has to be Oriya. And we have to do something very quickly with Oriya. So we have a business case that says all focus, once Cayman Brac's expansion is completed, which will be completed in a short period of time, the focus on Oriya is to move as quickly as possible and be able to accommodate the arrivals and departures that we have now in a better way. So what that means is that in the next year or 2 years, we would not be able to change the airport in Little Cayman, so the equipment for Little Cayman has to stay the same. But the business case for Cayman Brac and the equipment of Cayman Brac has identified that one of the reasons the economy of Cayman Brac has not benefited with the lift in there as Little Cayman has benefited is because Little Cayman has the plane of choice servicing them. It has exactly what the expectation is of the person that's arriving there. That's an out-island experience that's flying on a plane in a small airport, big windows. Cayman Brac has not been able to find the niche and the equipment that could give them the service that they needed with frequency. And that is right-sizing the equipment that's needed for Cayman Brac, and that's what that business case is. So I hope that's Not too long an answer.
Mr. Bush, did you have a follow-up question, or you were?
Oh, Mr. Chairman, I'm well aware of the situations there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bush. Thank you. If there are no further questions, then we'll proceed to vote. So all those in favor of EA 55, Cayman Brack and Little Cayman Roads, 1,200,000. EA 60, Cayman Brack, Bluff Playfield, 300,000. EA 95, Cemetery Vaults, Cayman Brack and Little Cayman, 20,000. EA 125, Cayman Brack Emergency Shelter, $175,000. EA 137, Cayman Brack Farm Wells, $25,000. And EA 139, Little Cayman Boat Launch Ramp for $75,000. Standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye. Aye. And those against, no.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to thank you for taking those EAs early. And I also want to thank the district commissioner, the deputy district commissioner, for being here to help us with the questions. And if it's okay with you, Mr. Chairman, to release them so they can go to the airport and catch their flight back.
Yes, sir.
Wish them safe travel.
Have a safe flight. Yeah. Thank you. Turning now to consider appropriation DAT 4, governance and administrative services for $256,874 on page 102 of the annual plan and estimates. DAT 4, governance and administrative services for $256,874 on page 102 of the annual plan and estimates. Are there any questions? Mr. Miller?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I see this deals with the Public Transportation Board. I have a question to the Minister. The Public Transportation Board licensed a number of buses, I think the number 9s, which are supposed to go into Northside and go as far, I think it is to Chisholm Store. I receive complaints on a regular basis that the people who are licensed for that route often put people out at Frankstown, rain or sunshine, and turn back. And I know that complaints have been made. I would ask, what is the Public Transportation Board doing to monitor these routes and make sure that the people are in fact doing what they're licensed to do?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for the question. I'm going to ask Director Banks to answer that.
Dirk Banks, the Director of Public Transport. In relation to route number 9, Mr. Chairman, if I can just give a brief history on what transpired. Prior to the opening of the Dr. Shetty Hospital, we had a route 3 which had 16 buses traversing to just the district of Bottonstown, and they were actually stopping at the Bottonstown police station. What the Public Transport Board did was they extended those 16 buses to Eastern and North Side. So in fact, there was an increase of 8 for number 9 and 8 for number 5 in response to that question. So to improve the service, to cover that area.
No. Through you, Mr. Chairman, I think you misunderstood the question. I'm not asking how the service was improved in terms of the number of buses, but I'm sure your office has gotten complaints that the people are supposed to go to Chisholm Store, but if they happen to cross a couple of people in breakers or P's Bay stand up by the side of the road, they throw the north side people out at Frankstown and they turn back so they can come back and pick up the people on the side of the road. And I'm asking, what is the Public Transport Board doing and how do they monitor that the people are actually driving the routes that they are licensed to drive?
Thank you. In relation to that question, there are matters that are before the Public Transport Board, and for not to get into specifics, as it could possibly turn into a judicial proceeding with revocation of permits. But what is being done is, you notice that we're asking for additional staff to cover that problem, which we have also identified, and hopefully that will be rectified in the short term.
Mr. McLean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I know that DAT 14 is also part of this public transport.
You want us to consider that at this time as well, Mr. McLean?
I think since that gentleman is there now, we might as well do that, Mr. Chairman, if I can suggest that.
No, that's a very good suggestion, sir. So we will also consider at this time appropriation DAT 14, Public Transport Services for $591,672 on page 112 of the annual plan and estimates. DAT 14, Public Transport Services, $591,672 on page 112 of the annual plan and estimates.
Okay. Now, Mr. Chairman, now that we have settled that one, Mr. Chairman, this is not a new question. This is not a new subject to this legislature, to this committee. For 14 years, I have been asking the same question. Last year, we got the same answers that was provided prior to that. What are we doing to try to mitigate the risk on the road with these public transportation buses?
Mr. Chairman, just to inform the member that the Public Transport Board has taken action in relation to this in coordination with the police. Unfortunately, you would have seen some persons in the newspaper that's saying that they've had their permit revoked, and that's some of the action that the board is taking without naming specific persons.
Mr. Chairman, I am not convinced that any of those happen to be on the eastern end of the island, which is most dangerous. I really don't understand how the general public can be put in danger and almost accidents, that is vehicle to vehicle, and the police are not seeing this. Since there is a joint project venture between public transport and the police, why is it that the buses are still doing the same thing? Do we have specific areas for them to pull off the road, or specific instructions on how they should pull off the road and re-enter the road?
Mr. Chairman, through you, the NRA, which we also work with, has a transportation planner, and they do provide that in cases of new construction, where the buildings are being built on the main road, that the buildings would have to provide lay-by. However, there are some challenges with the current road, for instance, through Bordentown, which traverse the main road there, that there is difficulty with finding a suitable area to actually pull off.
Mr. Chairman, last year. We heard the same thing last year. Nothing has changed, Mr. Chairman. Some bad accidents are going to happen. And because it didn't happen since last year, we think that it's okay. Mr. Chairman, the buses, and Mr. Chairman, granted, sir, you don't necessarily traverse that road during that period, nor many of your other colleagues as well, including the director. I bet you not many of you can tell the last time you've been up there. We were there every day, and that's no disrespect to you. Mr. Chairman, they stop right in the middle of the road, and they can pull off the road 100 yards down there. Are there people going around looking at these things? I see got 350 to 500 complaints that you expect. I'm sure this year you had the top end of that, 500. It has to be. Are we encouraging the public to call in? Is there any way that we can stop these people? They're going to kill people on the road. What can we do?
Thank you, Mr. Clean. Just for the record, it happens just about every road. I see it on Georgetown and Westbury Road as well. It is a fairly common problem. Mr. Banks, is there anything, following up on Mr. McLean's question, is there anything that the motoring public can do to report? Is there any video evidence, any photo evidence that the motoring public can provide to the Public Transport Board that would enable these perpetrators to have their license revoked or warned? What are the available options? I think is what Mr. McLean is really trying to determine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the difficulties that we've encountered is that persons are reluctant to give any statements, and as the rule of law, we cannot per se persecute someone without a statement. However, we recognize the difficulty that Mr. McLean has stated, and that's why we're asking for the additional staff for the enforcement to carry out such matters as what Mr. McLean has raised. But the public is reluctant. While they may phone and report, but they are reluctant to provide it in writing so that the board can actually take action.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask the gentleman, how many staff members are we hoping to recruit out of this budget?
We're hoping for 2, one as a replacement for some gentlemen that retired last year, and an additional staff.
And we thought we couldn't do it before last year, and we only getting one extra one. And the chairman just said that it doesn't happen alone on the roads that we traverse, it happens wherever. Mr. Chairman, again, I plead to that minister who has responsibility for this, just like last year. Stop this. It is going to cause our problems in this country. The day we see one of those minibuses, and I said this before, full to capacity, we're going to have a catastrophic accident on one of our roads, and we're going to lose multiple lives. These people are bringing their bad, dirty habits, driving habits to this country, and they're going to kill innocent people. Get people on the street to stop them. I understand that the public does not want to give evidence. Many times government has to step up and protect people from themselves. Do it! We need to get it done. We need to stop them.
Thank you, Mr. McLean. Mr. Suku, you had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the member from East End has pretty much expressed my concern in great detail. But my question is, in order to receive a permit to be a public transport driver, is there any higher level of testing involved or safety, public safety training, any sort of, anything beyond just a regular driver's license?
No, not for the driving. However, there is, Mr. Chairman, sorry, there is a requirement for local knowledge for the tourist aspect of the ride, answering questions and so forth from the public, that they have to be knowledgeable about the Cayman Islands.
Thank you.
Okay, just as a follow-up, then I would like to suggest that you look into that, because I think that is one of the answers where because I see it on a daily basis now, and I agree with the member from East End, if this continues, we're going to have a pretty horrible traffic incident up in the eastern part of the island sometime soon. I mean, me, myself, have been involved in near misses, I think, on a daily basis now. But I'd suggest you start maybe looking at the CCTV footage that we do have in order to gather your evidence if you want to actually prosecute and do something about the situation, but something has to be done.
Yeah, I mean the registration number.
Thank you, Mr. Suku.
Yeah.
Mr. Bush first, Mr. Miller, and then I think Mr. Conley. That's the order in which I've seen them. Mr. Bush?
Mr. Chairman, what can I ask the Minister, Mr. Banks, what is being done to assist those Caymanians who had reached the age that they are or were required to do over their tests to be granted a public transport license? I'm sure Mr. Banks will understand what I'm talking about. Are there any processes, new processes, or haven't been, we all know about, those of us in the ministry know about Caymanians who had reached a certain age group and they were asked to go back and do the test over, and were finding it difficulty, but we knew they were fit people to be able to drive, taxi, bus, whatever they had. But because they had reached a certain age, they were required to redo their license or their test. Has any sort of process been worked out for those persons?
Just to clarify, regarding the age, Mr. Chairman, there is, once you reach the age of 7, there is a mandatory that persons have to be retested for driving, but there's no requirement to retake the public transport test based on age. I'm not sure if that answered the question.
Where then is it the problem that people can't pass their driver's test? That is the problem that we were finding, or was it something to do with transport itself? Transport test, license?
I know that what the Public Transport Board has done, working in conjunction with the Department of Tourism, because like I said, it is a general knowledge test of the Cayman Islands. The Department of Tourism has put on workshops known as Pride Workshops, Personal Responsibility and Delivering Excellence. There are 2 workshop based. One is the customer service, and the other one is called Know Your Cayman Islands. And those are geared specifically to assist persons with passing the general knowledge test for the Cayman Islands.
Mr. Chairman, in regards to people that complaints are made about and therefore their licenses are revoked or they have a difficulty with their transport license, are there any new processes to put in place for those persons to go through some sort of test?
I'm not sure I quite understand what you're saying.
Well, Mr. Chairman, people complain about drivers. Some drivers are very hard-working people, very good ambassadors. Probably is a difficult person, but it's nevertheless they are in business. and they are good ambassadors, and I've seen this. But because people make complaints and the unit or the department, whatever it's called now, get those complaints, have a difficulty over the years with that person. What I'm asking is there any lenience, I guess, in the whole matter, or they just struck off after two completes, 5 completes?
I think that would tie in with Mr. Arden's question there. The board taking actions in regards complaints, and the board has taken action specifically on behavior and driving. So the board is cognizant of that, and basically that's the board approach to it, that persons do give an opportunity. It's a phased-in approach where first they're given a warning and then they're put on probation, and then if no improvement, then the permit is revoked.
Having found out, having knowledge of those persons, some of us whom I say are good ambassadors, except for whatever nuances they go through, the problems that come up and people complain. Are there any attempts to get those people into one of the courses that DOT puts on?
At the moment, out of the 687 persons that are employed in public transport, approximately 90% have actually went through the Department of Tourism courses.
90%.
90%.
Yes, but haven't found out about some of these persons. And I know MLAs in this room. I've been confronted with various cases. Been confronted with those cases. Have those persons, have any attempts been made to get those persons, or have they gone through any?
Without knowing specifics, I know that the public transport unit has made every effort to get persons all persons on the Department of Tourism workshops. However, it's still an ongoing project, so we're hoping to wrap it up by the end of the year, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, there has been wide publicity of certain cases. I don't want to get into the name calling here, and I'll probably do better by, privately talking to the minister or to Mr. Banks about it.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I just want to say that the ministry is aware of specific situations, and what the board has actually done is accepted members that are very important to this country as far as ambassadors and as far as the experience they have in the tourism industry. They allow them to come to board meetings to represent themselves or bring somebody and deal with it on a case-by-case basis. I just conferred with the chairperson, and that process will continue. If there are specific individuals that you want to, we can have a sidebar about it.
What I'm asking also is, having found out about those type of persons, have we said to them, look, we need you to come to this course that the department is putting on, so we can put them through the whole process of, look, while you're a good ambassador, there is some nuances that you probably don't understand, that you need to brush up on certain things, and we need you to attend this. That will help you with the situation that you're in. That's what I'm talking about.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, yeah, the answer to the question is yes, and I believe that the member is probably aware that more taxi licenses have been issued, more tour operators have been issued, and again, it's trying to work and empower them in the tourism industry.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mr. Bush. Mr. Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you and the Minister to the Director of Public Transport. One of the descriptions of the items under this vote that we're spending $591,000, which is a substantial increase from last year, is monitoring safety and security standards of all public transportation vehicles, ensuring compliance with rules and appropriate laws, and carrying out incident investigations. Can the Director tell this committee how he goes about achieving that output?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In relation to this, it's a threefold approach. First of all, we have an enforcement, as we say, we're asking, we recognize that there's a deficiency in that the public transport inspectors monitor and inspect public transport vehicles to ensure that they're compliant with the regulation. In addition to that, they also investigate complaints. And thirdly, they actually perform mobile patrol, so they're not stagnant at one location. So they do traverse the island. However, there are only 3 at the moment, so it's difficult for them to be in all locations of the island.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, what happens if while they're on patrol, they observe one of these bus operators breaking a rule or an appropriate law? What happens?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The bus driver is followed, first of all, and stopped and spoken to about the offense. He is served with a offense notification. He's given an opportunity to respond. That, along with the officer's statement, is then taken to the Public Transport Board for the Public Transport Board to take action against that offense.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, is it possible, as part of the licensing process, to provide a sticker with a phone number that they must display, just like how they display the sticker 9 Northside East End? Call this number. How's my driving? Call this number, to encourage the public to report it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're actually just working on that now. It's going to be basically almost like a bumper sticker. And in addition to the phone number, we're going to actually have an email address for that for the traveling public to send their comments in.
How do you monitor the number 9 bus to make sure it goes to Chisholm Store in Northside?
At the moment, we have 3 inspectors, and what they duties are, for instance, they would traverse their route, so they will travel along Bordentown, East End, and North Side. However, there's no guarantee that once they cross the public transport inspector, that the vehicle will continue. We're looking at some technology to address that, but we're still in the early stages of that.
Is it possible to require them to record a log and to actually have the proprietor of Chisholm Store sign that they came there on each of the route?
Mr. Chairman, the Public Transport Board has the authority to impose any condition on renewal of a permit. So to the member's question, that is possible.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Mr. Connolly, you are next, then Mr. McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you. In terms of the routes and how they're assigned, how do you ensure fairness, or is it a random process?
Mr. Chairman, the process, however, to specify how we're done with the fairness, at the moment, we have some routes that are actually over service, and that is, for instance, like the West Bay route. We have, based on the load factor that we know from the bus depot and the traveling public, we have approximately 60 buses, so there is a sufficient number of buses there on that route. Other routes, which is not as lucrative, persons are reluctant to apply for those routes, so you have that situation where persons are not applying for that route.
But I guess, just going back to the second part, how do you ensure some sort of fairness in how that's allocated? Because right now, it sounds like you apply for a route. If it's oversubscribed, then you get an alternative route. But that could be your route indefinitely when someone else has a more lucrative route indefinitely. Is there any kind of mix-up? Is there, on an annual basis, some sort of lottery, or how does that work year on year to ensure fairness?
Mr. Chairman, I think that these routes were previously assigned, and of course you would expect that persons would state legally they have a legitimate expectation that they have been granted this route, and to change that for a lesser route may be a breach.
Mr. Chairman, this is true. I guess I'm just grappling to try to understand the flip side of that, because then you're almost giving someone a competitive advantage in the business if they are guaranteed a route, or is there ever a time when you say, okay, no more routes at all going West Bay to Georgetown along, I don't know, whatever route, because we're oversubscribed, and you just tell people, you can if you want, choose this route, but we know it's not as busy or as active as the one before, so buyer beware or driver beware?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, that is correct, that persons are informed to that extent. However, we can review that to see if we can make that a more, as a member stated, a more equitable position for everyone that's in the business.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have two more questions in that. How many Caymanian drivers are there versus non-Caymanian drivers? And is there any priority categories, that is, Caymanians first, residents married to Caymanians, permanent residents, is there a priority list?
Mr. Chairman, through you, I'm not sure which category the member is referring to, but I have some information here. Out of the total breakdown of the 687 persons that's employed in public transport, 593 are Caymanian. It's 100% taxi, approximately 82.6% that are in the tour category. The public bus or omnibus is 69.8%. In the contract hire, which covers the school bus, we have a total of 82.6%. And in the water sports category, we have a 62.3% employment. So that's just the figures for the member. But overall, we have 593 Caymanians employed, and 27 persons that are on have PR, permanent residence and connections with Cayman, and 9.75% that are on gainful occupation license.
Yeah. And then my last one, Mr. Chairman. Is there a waiting list? And also, how long generally is that waiting list to be added to that 687 drivers?
The waiting list varies on categories. The most requested is taxis. We've had persons who previously waited from 2007 to get a taxi license, but the Public Transport Board has just issued 31 taxis, and that is the largest number that we've issued. We currently, there were approximately 8 persons waiting for tour. We've issued all 8 tour permits, and we have approximately 35 persons still waiting for taxi permits. And that is done in the chronological order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Conlon. Mr. McLean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, let me start with some of the question I originally had that Mr. Winston asked, but now his answers brought some other one. How many of those 31 that were issued recently are Caymanians?
All taxi drivers are Caymanians, sir.
And
100%.
how many are the tour operators?
All operators are Caymanians, so that's also 100%.
And the 35 that you have left?
They're all Caymanians as well, sir.
Okay. And can you explain gainful occupation in your
License.
sense that you just explained?
Gainful occupation license, those are on work permits.
Okay. And how would someone get that? Why would someone get that?
Those are the categories where those persons are working for Caymanians in the transportation industry. So the Caymanian owns the tour business or owns the public bus, and they hire someone to drive for them.
And you say that that's about 100?
No, that's 67 in total.
67?
Yes, sir.
Give or take 67. It appears like they are troublemakers, right? By and large, yeah, you can't say it in here, but I can. Mr. Chairman, what is the new technology that we're looking at to try and have some control and track to ensure that the buses go to East End, West Bay, or follow the route? Or are they required to follow that route religiously, and how many times per day? And what is the technology that you're looking into?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Currently, the Public Transport Unit is offering a pilot program with Lanson Survey, and we're looking at the GPS, but it's in its early stages, and it has quite a lot of technology. They can monitor the speed, the distance, and the vehicle's travel. So we're actually looking at, but that's in its early infant stages, and we're working with the Lanson Survey Department with that.
Yeah, and what are they required to do on their routes? That was the other part of the question.
The public buses, are you referring to, sir? Yes, there are stops, and this is some of the challenges that we had. I know we've heard this excuse over and over, but Hurricane Ivan removed tremendous amount of bus stops. We have identified that we need 430. However, we recognize that the financial challenges that the government have, and we have partnered with Rotary, and Rotary of providing bus shelters in that respect to assist with identifying stops. So that is an ongoing project as well that we're working with the private sector.
Yeah, but Mr. Chairman, I wasn't overly worried about where they stop. I'm more concerned about where they have to go. i.e., East End, are they required to follow the routes that they have every time they come to East End, or when the last person they drop off is lower end of the bay? Can they just turn around and go back out? That's what I'm concerned.
No, sir. Just for an example, Route 5 and 9 traverse opposite directions. So Route 5, just for clarity, goes to East End all the way around Queensland Highway, comes back through Frank Sound. Route 9 does the reverse, goes from Frank Sound to Queens Highway to East End. So if you drop someone at Lorinda Bay, they should continue on to Colliers and to Queens Highway and then back to Northside.
I wonder if, would you know when last time that route was done the way it's supposed to be? You wouldn't, right? I guess not, because you're not there.
Mr. Chairman, through you, I would like to state that the Department of Tourism work closely with the Public Transport Unit, and every year they do what they call a secret shopper survey on customer service. And currently last year, public transport had a 80% satisfaction.
80? 8 to 0, or you drop that 0, 'cause don't mean nothing.
Sorry, Mr. McLean, 1 second, just for clarification. Mr. Banks, are you saying that 80% satisfaction rate in the sense of customers being satisfied with the service? Or?
With the total experience, and this covers both taxi, tour, public public buses. It's a survey that's done on the complete industry.
Okay, but not specifically the minibus public transport system, which I think is what is being questioned here.
Mr. Chairman, I recognize what the member have said, and we recognize that there are challenges. However, I must say that we've seen great improvements, and you just have to look at TripAdvisor, CI Transportation, and you can see the positive comments that's made with public transport.
Mr. Chairman, I'm wondering if it was 8 or 80, he said.
80.
80? 80. Mr. Chairman, no, in this sense, 0 really mean nothing. I'm glad that your taxes brought that up, because certainly it cannot be that those buses. And I don't want to be disrespectful to anybody, but if they are licensed to do a job, they are going to do the job, or we're going to take them off the road. And they're going to do it in an efficient, effective, and friendly manner. That's how this life works. Now, Mr. Chairman, if the member can, Mr. Banks can tell me, why is it taking so long with the technology that you talked about, the GPS tracking? Because there are many companies in this country who use it now. Is it that we need a specific one or a different type?
Mr. Chairman, I think if we had some money, we could move a lot faster.
Well, Mr. Chairman, the minister sitting right there, he knows that we just supported everything for Cayman Bragg this year for Grand Cayman, so that we can protect our people, and we can at least try to develop a public transport system, because the country is growing and not everybody has the wherewithal to use their own vehicle, and we really don't need more vehicles anyway, and this would assist in that regard too. Whatever we can do with public transport, it will certainly assist with preventing so many cars from being on our roads and the need to expand our roads and the likes. And Mr. Chairman, my question is to the minister then. It certainly will not cost that much to put a system in. I know what we're talking about. The modules are not that expensive. The initial cost of the entire software and the hardware to do it is not that expensive. It's a matter of monitoring it. That's what it is. And these are shelf products right now.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank the member for his support in increasing the budget. He certainly made mention of the increase in this specific line item in DAT 14. The ministry is supportive of exactly what you said. You heard the director say that it's early, and what we can commit to you is that if the director, once he gets himself in a situation, not only for the technology, what he needs, but the monitoring of it, and he makes the representation, we will look and see if there's some way we can do it in a shorter period of time than it's now being looked at to be brought next year in the next budget. But if we can early it up, we understand the importance of it, and we understand what it would do, not only for the eastern districts, but for all of Grand Cayman.
But Mr. Chairman, is the minister telling me early next year in next year budget? Which next year are you talking about? The one start July 1st year, or the one starting the next July?
The director said that he was early in the program, so he didn't have the costing of the program available to go into this budget. And what I'm saying to the member is that if in 6 months the director comes and has the costing of it and has an implementation of it, we are certainly willing to look at it and prioritize it.
Mr. Chairman, through you to the minister. Mr. Chairman, these are things that you go and pull off the shelf. The shelf life of these things are 3 months. Companies are buying them left, right, and center. And then
Mr. McLean, in all reasonableness, I do think that there's probably 100 or more of these buses on the road. He just mentioned that there's 60 alone on the West Bay Road route. So the question is, one, what's the cost of this system that you are saying is available on the shelf? Two, who's going to fund the purchase of it? Three, the installation of it. Four, is an electronic tracking system necessarily the most efficient? Or with a simple check post, I think Mr. Miller mentioned a simple thing as someone at a predetermined location, you'd have to check in there. You know, electronics are convenient, but they do have a cost attached to it. So I would suggest to the director of the Public Transport Board that in researching and formulating his plan for the electronic monitoring system, they also consider something that has no cost to it or has minimal cost, because one bump on a road and if it's not attached properly, it falls off. One accident, it has to be replaced, or they could even disable it.
well, Mr. Chairman, there are companies in this country who currently install them on large
Vehicle fleets.
fleets
Yeah.
in this country right now. So it's a matter of sending it out, RFP, and look for prices or something.
But the question still remains, who bears the cost?
Well, government needs to bear it because we need to, one, protect our people. Two, we need to ensure that we are protecting the people from unruly drivers. And we need to ensure that we develop a public transport system that is robust, and we know it is going to the places that it should,
But you're then
because in East End it should be
You're then-
crisscrossing.
You're then getting into a gray area as the government purchasing equipment for installation on private property. Whereas the example you mentioned earlier is private enterprise purchasing equipment to place on their private property.
And if we are the regulators, Mr. Chairman, but anyway, whatever the minister can do to try and stop these people from killing people, try and get them to go through their routes so that they at least can pick people up. It's ridiculous. I have children in my constituency who needs to get to town to their parents after school to do their extracurricular thing like chorale and the dance and the what have you. And 9 o'clock, from 3 o'clock, and no bus yet? Come on.
Mr. Connolly? Oh, sorry, Mr. Connolly before you. Mr. Miller did have his hand up for some time waiting on Mr. McLean to finish. So, Mr. Miller?
Yeah, I wonder if the director could tell me how many times in the survey that got the 80% grade did a Mr. Shopper actually take a number 9 bus?
Mr. Chairman, that survey was actually conducted by the Department of Tourism. Obviously, you would want, for fairness and to ensure quality of the survey, you would want me or the Public Transport Unit to be conducting it, and then of course we go there. The argument could be made that, be on your best behavior because it's, we're doing a survey today. So it's done for independence and quality control. But there are numerous persons that have taken the bus, and we do have feedback from them, and with some of Mr. Miller's concern, and that's why we're looking to address it through the various avenues, the GPS, the increasing of staffing for monitoring and enforcement.
Mr. Chairman, with the greatest of respect, this is just smoke and mirrors. You throwing out the figure that you know that the route number 9 and number 5 to East End has an 80% approval rating. Well, ask a simple question. I didn't ask who did the survey, and then ask you to do the survey. How many times did a mystery shopper take a number 9 bus during the period of the survey?
Mr. Chairman, through you, I think there may have been some confusion as to the survey. That is the overall grade of the entire public transportation system, 80%. It was not a breakdown as to specifics as to specific routes, but there were comments attached to it.
Mr. Miller, do you follow what is being, the 80% overall rating was a survey done by the tourism department or ministry that covered all areas of transportation: taxis, tour operators, minibus drivers, and if there's a fourth category, including those as well. And overall, it was said, the results of the survey, that 80% of the people were satisfied with the service they received. But there's no way of saying from that survey what percentage of the traveling public were satisfied with the minibus operations. So your Route 9, there's no statistic to show the satisfaction of customers on route number 9.
Mr. Chairman, through you, the report itself, we can make the report available to the member of how the Department of Tourism did it. The number 9 bus has obviously been flagged, and the director is going to look at that specifically. If you would like him to take a look at it and call you directly and see if there's something that he can help with.
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to know if anybody took a number 9 bus, because if nobody took a number 9 bus, then it doesn't relate to my area at all.
Right. Well, what is not here is the report, but what the chairman just said is that she can get the report. So can we supply that to the member? Is that something you'd like to have a look at? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Connolly?
Mr. Chairman, just through you, I've had a number of complaints in my constituency clinics about cost of taxis, right? Where a taxi can have 4 people in it, start from the same, point of origin, and end up paying 4 different rates based on where they go. So say they left the turtle farm, they went to the Strand, that would be one rate that the person paid for. Then the other person would pay again from the turtle farm to say KFC, an entire rate. How do we calculate rates, and how are they supposed to be charged for taxes?
Mr. Chairman, there are calculated, there's a flat rate for the first 1.3 miles for 3 persons, and then for every additional person, there is a charge. However, in referring to the member, I think what has transpired was at the time there was a shortage of taxis servicing the airport. So for instance, let's say there was 1 taxi left at the airport and there were 3 persons to go to West Bay Road. What the airport did was they put all 6 persons in the taxi, and if that person normally had taken the taxi by themselves, they would have had to pay the fare to begin with. So that's how that came about.
But if you're a tourist and you're coming in to this island and you just happen to be a group, but you're staying at different hotels, that initial experience is going to be a very negative experience based on what you're used to, which is probably co-sharing and paying, an additional $1 or whatever it is per person. I mean, how could that even be justified, Mr. Chairman, through you?
Mr. Chairman, we, the Public Transport Board recognized the deficiency in the number of taxis, and that's why you saw the increase, the issuing of 31, and it's constantly under review. So to the member, in the event that we get further complaints, there will be issuing of further taxi license to prevent such occurrences.
Mr. Chairman, if I may ask Mr. Banks, at the airport, do you have anything to do with the amount of taxes that are put there? Because you just mentioned that if there's a shortage of taxes, there's a problem. Do you have anything to do with the licensing of taxes at the airport?
The Public Transport Board does not dispatch the taxes per se, but one of the challenges that the airport has recognized is that, for instance, when there's a heavy cruise ship, they struggle to get taxis, and that's the reason for the increase in taxes to help complement the numbers that is by the airport.
Okay, and I appreciate that, but how does that translate into them getting on and being, I don't know if it's licensed to be at the airport? Would that be?
Mr. Chairman, to the answer to the member, the Public Transport Unit does not dispatch the taxes. I am aware that there's a process that you have to apply to the Cayman Islands Airport Authority, and they would grant permission, but I'm not able to speak to specifics to that process.
But Mr. Chairman,
McLean, are you asking?
Here's where I'm at. The member just said that we have a problem at the airport. He has a responsibility to manage public transport. In response to that, he issues 31 licenses or whatever that was, whatever the number was. And they got to apply up there, and I can tell you they go and put on a waiting list. So I'm trying to see what's the use of the public transport issuing these licenses, and we're still no further here at the airport. And I believe the public transport did the best thing to try and alleviate the problem. But how does it dovetail?
Mr. Chairman, if I can try to answer that question, out of the 31 members, 31 new taxi drivers that's been approved, currently there are only actually 4 persons actually so far gone and get a license. So it may be a difficulty, actually get a vehicle, sorry. So there may be a difficulty to actually apply to the airport, but they actually don't have a vehicle as yet to commence operation. So I don't know if that's maybe the hold up with the airport.
Well, there's a chicken before the egg situation here, eh? If you don't know you get to go at the airport, you don't know the type of vehicle you get. You need. If you don't know you're going on the dock, you can get onto the dock, you don't know the type of vehicle you need. So what needs to happen is, it's logical, logic follows that you apply there first. And then if you get the approval, you go and get the vehicle.
Thank you, Mr. McLean. Mr. Bush, you had a question?
So what I was just made to understand, the people were given a license and didn't have a vehicle? Is that what was just said? I want to clarify that.
We have granted permits to persons, and they're in the process of obtaining vehicles, correct?
Okay. Now, we've all heard the complaints. When you deal with the drivers and they need to appeal, who do they appeal to? We hope it's not like the police where they police themselves. Who appeals to your decisions when the drivers don't feel that they've been treated right or fair? Who do they go to act as a middleman to see that you've done your job fairly with them or told them the truth when they're told this is the reason why you don't have a license or why we're taking away your license? Who do they deal with when they don't feel they get the 25 cents worth with you as a director?
There actually is an appeals tribunal. There's a public transport appeals tribunals, Mr. Chairman, and all persons who are informed of decisions are informed in writing, and that is specified the conditions that they need to appeal and the process to which to do so.
Mr. Chairman, through you. So when these drivers are suspended or expelled, whichever phrase you prefer to use, they're given that in writing. So when they come to us as MLAs to complain about your department or about yourself, all I have to do is ask them, where is it in writing, and I'll see all the problems.
They should receive a letter from the public transport.
Should.
Yes, they do receive it, in fact.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Through you. Thank you very much, Mr. Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. Mr. Banks, I just have actually two questions. Is there a requirement for a certain quality vehicle or standards in order to receive a taxi permit?
Yes, sir. There is a standard for public transport vehicles.
But how can you assess that when the permit is issued before the person acquires the vehicle and presents it for inspection, supposedly?
Persons are granted approval in writing that they've been issued a public transport, or they've been granted a public transport permit. However, they're not giving their public transport ID until the process is completed, which includes the inspection of the vehicle.
I follow you. So it's more provisional. It's more of a provisional permit with full ID and everything once the vehicle is inspected and they've gone through the proper procedures. I follow you now. Finally, last question for me. You mentioned earlier that many routes are oversubscribed, and I've gotten complaints from one or two bus operators that even though some of those routes are oversubscribed, they aren't fully serviced, in the sense that people have gone and gobbled up many of the routes to prevent competition on those routes, but aren't actually providing sufficient capacity service on the route itself. So while on your books it appears that the routes are oversubscribed, on the actual road there isn't enough public transport available. How do you correct a situation like that? And some of the routes are being traded between operators. How do we correct a situation like that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In relation to that question, there are a number of factors that we use. For instance, there is a depot frequency which is carried out by the public transport unit, and that shows how much times, for instance, you actually attended the bus depot and actually was dispatched to provide service, and then that is followed up by the monitoring of the inspectors on the public on the road. As to the trading of routes, we have heard the rumors, but we have not got any facts or evidence to support that. But we've also heard those facts.
Thank you, Mr. Banks.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bush, you have another question?
Yes, two final questions. Is there a dress code for the drivers? And that blue shirt that I see them in, is that something that you all have told them to have to wear?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In relation to the dress code, there is a dress code which all persons are issued with in writing upon issuance of their public transport permit, and the blue shirts are part of their uniforms, which is mandatory for them to wear once they are working.
Yes, I think what has happened, Mr. Chairman, through you, is that I don't know if they only get one shirt or two shirts, but in a very short time, they look shabby. And a lot of the drivers still leave a lot to be desired the way they dress to the public, especially like what Councillor Connolly said earlier on, that experience coming in, I think that's maybe an area you have to look into. And last but not least, sir, on a Sunday or a holiday, are there specific times that they're supposed to run until? Are they allowed to cut off at a certain time? Because many a time I've given people a lift 10 o'clock at night on a Sunday night or even on a holiday, and they say there are no buses on the road, they can't catch a ride or whatever. Is there a specific time that they're supposed to stop running certain routes?
Mr. Chairman, I think there was a part in two parts. I'll take the last part first in relation to the service of the routes on public holidays and Sundays. Unfortunately, due to lack of staffing, we are unable to actually monitor public holidays and Sundays. However, they should run as normal, and the normal time from the bus is 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. There are persons who provide service outside of that from early as 4 o'clock in the morning and some as late as 10 o'clock. But again, due to limited staff, we are unable to monitor that, and that's one of the things that we're also hoping to improve on with the increase in staffing. And if the member could just repeat the first part of the question, just to...
Oh, the first part wasn't really a question. It was just more or less an once you confirm that blue shirt is a uniform that you're supposed to wear, what I'm saying is a lot of the drivers still leave a lot to be desired the way they dress, and that those blue shirts, I don't know if they don't get enough of them, but after a few weeks or so, you can just see them start to really wear away. So that's just an observation, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. If there are no further questions, we'll proceed to the vote. So all those in favor of DAT4, DAT4, Governance and Administrative Services, $256,874, and DAT14, Public Transport Services, $591,672. Standing prior to schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. I think this is a convenient time to take our evening break.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, before we break, if it's all right with members to release the director?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
Thank you.
I'd
I'd like to thank the director for his presence here today.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. We will take our evening break now, and we will return at 7 p.m. and we will continue on till 9 p.m. this evening. We will now suspend proceedings for approximately 40 minutes.